that there are power issues in family units, that there are methods of organization within the family unit that you should be aware of that will make it easier for you to be the more educated funeral director. You don't want to be a funeral director that doesn't have any understanding of who's in charge in a traditional patriarchal family, but you would understand that it's the male, it's male dominated, and if that male dies, that the power is going to go to the oldest son. So sociology is the organization of social groups, family groups, relations between groups, group trends. It's not individual behavior, and it helps us to determine what the family needs based on your knowledge of the family units. We're going to go over the family units. So we're going to look at the nuclear family, the blended family, the joint extended family. But in an overview, these are kind of the things that we'll be looking at for the overall studies. It would be a bonus gift if you were able to get questions as simple as what is a funeral rite, what is a memorial service, and what is the difference between a memorial service and a funeral rite. But you never know. It's terminology that you may not have known about before you came into school, but all of a sudden you do know, and you're able to make those distinctions with the family that you're dealing with. We looked at, in our course in sociology and in Father Fraser's course in funeral home directing, or whoever you have for that, the different types of funerals. And we looked at the adaptive funeral, which is the funeral that probably is going to be the most common in terms of the baby boomers who want to come in and really have a say in terms of how they want the funeral presented, what kinds of music they want, what traditions they want respected. Humanistic is, as we know, devoid of all religious connotation. Primitive is not as common as it would be in the American Indian civilizations. So you may run into, if you were in that part of the country, a Native American funeral rite, and they would observe a primitive funeral rite, which would mean that you may not be allowed to participate and you'd be asked to leave the room. Traditional and non-traditional are exactly what they mean. There are two-word combos that occur in the course, and it's two words that mean exactly the same thing, and if you check the glossary, it says ritual, see ceremony, ceremony, see ritual. But it's ritual and ceremony. The extended and the joint family are the same, and we use interchangeably socialization and enculturation. In sociology, we study the social function, the event that we all have something in common. We know about society as a group forming a single community with some interests in common. Again, the reason the American Board places this course in the curriculum is so that you're aware of the broader aspects of the family that you're dealing with. Psychology, it's going to be a one-on-one. You'll have to understand the dynamics of grief. You'll have to know more about the individual psyche and the individual person that you're dealing with. But sociology is broader, so it really takes into context the group, the family, and society as a whole. We look at how we regulate behavior, and from a sociological perspective, we have customs, which we all have and adhere to. Those customs are readily apparent in a nation like the United States, where we have different immigrant groups coming in that have different customs. The challenge for the funeral director is that if they're in a neighborhood where they've always predominantly catered to Irish and Italian clients, that all of a sudden they have a change and they have a Hispanic population come in, and they would have to then know the customs of those people, because the funerals are going to change to accommodate the customs of the people. And folkways, has a way of popping up in a lot of different instances because they're not as strict in terms of regulating behavior. So violating a folkways would be showing up at a funeral dressed in a miniskirt. It would be something that the behavior would be acknowledged as being inappropriate, but you wouldn't be asked to leave because you weren't dressed properly. Mores, must behavior, calls for strong reaction from society if violated. So I was thinking about this because mores can sometimes overlap with a law. You could break a law and break a more at the same time. And what we look at for the mores are things in society that really more or less allow people to respectfully regulate their behavior. If we look at the snowstorm we just had, there were a lot of laws that went into effect about emergency parking and snow removal. So not in New York, but in New Jersey and Connecticut, it's against the law to have snow on the top of the car. And you can get a violation or a ticket, but not in New York. In New York, or if anywhere, if you were to have snow on the top of your car, you see those people, they just have a little spot rolled out in front so they can see out of the car. You'd be violating a more. You'd also be breaking the law, but at the same time, it's society that feels very strongly about what you're doing. So they care as well as the legal system. Laws are enforced by those governing rule of action authority. Taboo, things we abstain from. We're concerned primarily with the taboos about the deceased, that we don't in any way violate the rights and respect for the deceased and for the family of the deceased. These are the families. We're going to go into them in a little bit more depth, so I'm just going to read off the family units: the single parent, the nuclear, blended, extended, and modified extended, but we're going to look at them more in depth in a minute. Who rules the family? Could be patriarchal, could be matriarchal, could be egalitarian. So again, these would be lovely questions to get. They would be so easy to answer, and it would just be a gift. What exists in society today? Class is a social grouping in which members possess rightfully equivalent culturally valued attributes. We know about this, we know about class. This is what I meant about the 5 o'clock news or the 6 o'clock news. We know that class is, we have different classes. We belong to probably the middle class, the upper middle class, the lower middle class, lower class. Culture is abstract patterns, and customs are social behavior dictated by the tradition of the people. Cultural relativism, we covered this in the book. It's when the emotional attitude of all cultures are equal. It's particularly important for a funeral director to have this way of thinking. Ethnocentrism is emotional attitude that one's own race, nation, group is superior. Those are the funeral homes that are going to have problems with changing demographics. They're not going to be able to accommodate. They're going to feel their group is superior, and they are not going to easily be able to accommodate the new group that's coming into their neighborhood. Demographics, we know what they are. We know that they're vital statistics that collect gender, age, etc. We receive information from demographics. The census that's done every 10 years collects information on demographics. Bureaucratization is the creation of a system which governs through departments, subdivisions, hierarchy. I found repeatedly in class that students weren't that familiar with the term bureaucratization. So a bureaucracy, you know that, it's the Department of Motor Vehicles. It's dealing with the New York State Agency. So it's a complex organization that has a hierarchy where you're not allowed to jump from low to high without going through several steps in between. And social stratification is the categorization of people by money, prestige, or power, ranking of social status, position in groups, lower, middle, upper class. What's the difference? Social stratification is categories based on status and finance. If you notice to what they're saying in the political realm, they're talking about the politicians attracting a certain group of people, and those are the followers that they are describing. So when they talk about Trump, what they talk about is that the group that he seems to be attracting is the blue-collar workers, that in terms of the social stratification, the categories are based on status and finances, that he's appealing to a certain group population that has been defined by society as having these characteristics. Social mobility is moving around in those categories. This is what the politicians are selling to us, that they can bring you back into the middle class, that maybe you've slipped out of the middle. Well, it's entertaining, so I just keep going. Class is a social grouping in which members possess roughly equivalent culturally valued attributes. We know what class is. We don't have any problems trying to figure that out. What are the other things that end in T-I-O-N? Funeralization, it's a word that we made up, so if you do spell check, you're going to get that that's an incorrect word, but it's our word. As funeral directors, we have a claim to it. Industrialization is the individual crafting of products, so you know about the Industrial Revolution. You probably studied that in high school. Urbanization is the change from rural to urban. 80% of the population lives in an urban population. Cultural universals, we did this in the class in terms of the commonality across different cultures, that there are certain standards that each culture adheres to that include the announcement of death, the care of the deceased, the disposition, the ceremony or ritual, and the memorialization. So we're just saying that across all populations there are similarities that you're going to find that those different groups have used one or more of these cultural universals in order to follow through on the ceremony that they're going to do for the deceased. Neolocalism, it's a good term to throw into a test that would be, what does it mean? It's the offspring move away from where they were born. So this would be for your your anatomy class when you did prefixes and suffixes. Neo is new, localism is the locale. So if you move away from where you were born, you'd be an example of neolocalist. Mobility is being mobile, move from one class, one place to another. There's a big emphasis on mobility in socialization. It's a big push with the politicians this year, is the mobility of the middle class, the lower class moving into the middle class. It's kind of the carrot that they hold out in front of people to say, if you vote for me, we'll be able to move you from one class to another class. Direct learning comes from parents and formal education, colors, animals, family members. So the direct learning is teaching the kids how to count. It's really very structured learning. Indirect comes from our cultural environment, attitudes, manner of dress, ways of thinking. Indirect is more or less the where many stereotypes get born and bred. So they're the things that we learn from our family that are not spoken but may be acted out. These definitions we went through before. The funeral rite is a social function. It's not necessarily a happy event or an occasion, but it is a social function. What are the effects of geographic location? Parts of the country have different customs. Merchandise chosen is determined by the region where the family originated. full couch versus half couch, flowers chosen, wood versus metal. Different parts of the country. Well, I'm sure, where are you from originally? Jamaica. So they would have different customs down there in terms of the materials that would be chosen. What about flowers? Do they big on flowers down there?
Are, yes.
And then a preference for wooden or metal caskets?
I think it's mixed.
Is it mixed?
It is, yes.
So it's pretty similar to what we
And they're
would
very
have.
Americanized in a lot of areas. So,
Oh.
yeah.
Well, that's because all the Jamaicans are coming to AAMI to get educated. So we're teaching them all the American customs. Full couch versus half couch, that's depending on where you are. In Connecticut, they do half couch. Yeah. In Jamaica, they do full couch or half couch.
Mainly half couch, but I've seen a full couch maybe once or twice.
Yeah, it's not as common as it used to be. And then wood versus metal, that's the big debate. This is if people have the funeral with the traditional merchandise that we purchase. We're not even talking about cremation, which then eliminates all of the issues that we just looked at. So now we're looking at the types of families, and these are the types of family structures. The extended family is the family that lives on the farm. It's big, it's the Waltons. The nuclear family is small, 2 parents, 2.5 kids. President Bush, President Obama, both came from nuclear families. Blended families, his, hers, it's the Brady Bunch. She has kids, he has kids, or one or the other has kids, and then they merge the families and then try to raise them all together. Modified extended nuclear family is everyone. That's where the AA groups or the support groups or the neighborhood groups are very active in terms of taking care of their families. And single parent family is the death of the parent eliminates the family unit. So in a patriarchal family, which is what the joint extended family always has as its governing structure, a patriarchal unit, there are special problems because the family looks to the funeral director for leadership and professional guidance. They may have problems making decisions easily and look for a male image, internal conflict in family looking for a male heir, confusion about financial matters. This is where you're going to run into some problems because of your age and because of your gender. So they may feel more comfortable working with an older male that traditionally in the funeral industry is the typical kind of funeral director that used to exist. However, now in funeral schools, 60% of the students are female, so you're part of the bulk of the population that's going through that's going to change the trend in the funeral industry to make it more female. But there are families who specifically need a male image in order to help them make their funeral arrangements. Joint extended family, these are the characteristics. As I said before, it's patriarchal. It's always patriarchal. It's agriculturally based. It's on the farm. It's rural. Religious, it's very conservative. Women are subservient. Restricted mobility, they do not move around. Impact of death does not threaten. We will look at the impact of death on the family units to say that in certain family units, the structure can absorb more stress because there is more cohesion in the family unit. So in the joint extended family, they're the big collective family unit. They have aunts and uncles and have other people that can fill in the gap. The nuclear family can be patriarchal or matriarchal or egalitarian. The economics based on total family income. Usually the parents work outside the home. They're more liberal in thought, dress, and actions compared to the joint, which is very conservative. They're more mobile. They also move around. Nuclear family, the impact of death on the nuclear family because of the small size, income affected, causing economic problems. When a child dies in the nuclear family, it's very traumatic. Smaller families that have a loss of a child have a higher divorce rate because of the pressure that usually happens once the child dies. There's more pressure on the parents, and it's just that the family unit doesn't always survive the impact of the child's death. Blended family, you'll have a family walk in to make funeral arrangements. You won't know they're a blended family. You won't find out about the ex-husband or the ex-wife until perhaps later on when there's a problem. And those are very complex funeral arrangements that have to be made by funeral directors. On the death of the spouse, decisions made by the surviving spouse may cause problems. This would be if somebody was recently divorced, recently married, died suddenly, had the new wife decide to cremate the husband and have the prior family want a full-fledged funeral, but the delineation about who's in charge would be that the spouse has the right to call the shots, so that could raise issues with the family and issues with the problem. Modified extended nuclear family is nuclear families linked to one another. These are kinship, friendship, supports. We find these a lot in neighborhoods. So you find the community will come together to mourn the loss of one of the individuals who's active in the community group. Don't confuse the modified extended family with the extended family. The extended family is really particularly that farm-based unit. These are definitions. You know them already about a rite, a ritual, a ceremony, rites of passage. We just need to know that certain things are a rite of passage, that death is a rite of passage, birth is a rite of passage. In many cultures, becoming an adult, becoming a man or a woman. For teenagers, we have the bar mitzvah. For different sweet 16 parties, celebrations, rites of passage, marriage, divorce could be a rite of passage. Other definitions that we had to cover were symbols, anything to which social creative meaning is given. This could be a problem for a funeral home that is traditionally a Christian funeral